Hi, this is Peter Purvis. You're listening to the Sirens of Audio. Hope you enjoy what you're going to hear.
G'day audiophiles, you're listening to the Sirens of Audio, the podcast that explores the universe of Doctor Who and the audio media. My name is Dwayne.
And my name is Philip. G'day audiophiles, good to be here.
And just a reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and make sure you subscribe to us on your podcast feed too if you're listening to us that way. Great to have your support. Thank you for that. We've got a good show lined up today, Philip.
We do indeed. Looking forward to it as always.
Tell us about it.
Well, today we have Elliot Chapman coming to speak to us. So people may know him. He took over the role of Michael Craze. So Ben Jackson, of course, a favourite companion, first of the modern companions that the producers decided to introduce with William Hartnell, Ben and Polly, from the swinging 60s. And so Michael Craze played him very successfully for about 12 months or so. And unfortunately, Michael Craze passed away with a tragic accident, actually, in a pub he was running, and so was never able to come back and do any Big Finish. So for a long time, Big Finish wasn't recasting, and then finally decided it was time to. And
I guess most fans know what the accident was, but what was it?
He fell down a flight of steps. So he was just, in his pub, he fell down the steps. And,
That's terrible.
Yes, it's awful.
Okay. So Elliot came in and started doing Ben Jackson from the Yes Men, which was the very first early adventures, written by Simon Gurrier, wasn't it?
It was indeed.
And I don't think he was originally intended to become a regular to start with, but he ended up being given more and more to do throughout both the early adventures and the Companion Chronicles. So done quite a few stories now. How many has he done, Philip?
That's a good question. I'm just looking. 12.
12 stories as Ben?
12. It's Ben's. 12 is Ben. So okay. 6 of those are early adventures and 4 of those were Companion Chronicles. So, yeah.
So that makes 10.
Yes, 10. When I say 12.
You did.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Yes.
He has done a couple of other things too. I know he's done at least one Fourth Doctor story.
Oh, 11. There we go. We split the difference. He's done 5 Companion Chronicles. 5
Companion Chronicles.
6 early adventures.
Early adventures and 1 Fourth Doctor adventure, but not as Ben, different character.
Yes.
Okay, so in preparation for this, Philip, I listened to The Forsaken, which was the second early adventures release, and it was a really interesting one, set in Singapore during World War II. Not only was it a historical, but it kind of merged the base under siege concept with Ben meeting his father, who was the same physical age as him at that particular time. So a very, very interesting story, a little bit more involved than the first early adventures, which was the Yes Men for Elliot to play. So I really thought that was a great one to check out, because I like those kind of pseudo-historicals. Which one did you listen to, Philip, to get yourself ready?
Yeah, well, I actually listened to The Home Guard. So I was just curious to have a listen to that. And once again, it's interesting what they've done with Ben. I mean, Ben is a bit of a two-dimensional character in the TV show. I mean, I like him. He's a likable guy, but he's just hasn't got a lot of depth that they really managed to pull out. They weren't really doing that much with companions at that point. So it's just seeing that they're actually trying to fill out the companions a lot more. And so some of the things that Elliot gets to do is good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to him.
Okay, so to lead us in, because The Forsaken is the earlier one, I'll throw in a trailer for the Home Guard a little later, but I'll throw in a trailer for The Forsaken, and we'll come back in a moment with Elliot Chapman.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, The Early Adventures, The Forsaken.
I'm the Doctor. This is Ben, Polly, Jamie. Nice to meet you. I'd better take you to the hotel. The boat's unlikely to get here for another day at least, I'm afraid.
Oh, dear.
Just so long as the Japanese don't get here first.
Japanese?
They're advancing through Singapore. Total blimmin' disaster from what I hear, but we should be evacuated before they get this far.
Private Jim Jackson, but everyone calls me Jacko.
Actually, we have our own Jacko, don't we, Ben?
Not now, Paul.
What's wrong with you, Ben? You look like you've seen a ghost.
Doctor, Ben, there is someone. Look, over there.
Where? What did you see, Paul?
I don't know. A figure. Barely more than a shadow.
Is it that what was worrying you, Doctor? Worrying me? You said you could feel there was something wrong. Yes. Possibly. Very possibly.
Oh, no!
Paul, get down!
Oh, it sounds silly, but it looked like death.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Death don't hang about, you know. He's got things to do.
Well, audiophiles, it's great to keep interviewing different companions. The companion has an important role for keeping the story going with the Doctor. And often recasting companions is one of the hardest jobs Big Finish does. And certainly when it came time to recast one of the first Doctor and second Doctor favourite companions, Big Finish looked to Elliot Chapman. And so, Elliot, welcome aboard. It's great to have you at Sirens of Audio.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first? Where are you? And yeah, just a little bit about who you are, where you are.
Right. Okay. That question you get asked so many times, then your brain goes, "Who am I? What am I?" It's that philosophical thing. Well, yes, I'm Elliot Chapman. I live in the UK. I live in Bristol, which is about 120 miles from London, which is looking particularly grey at the moment, and you may even hear the sirens are coming to get me.
It's the
Bills. Yeah, unfortunately,
I'm waiting for the theme to start.
Whatever that is okay.
They're coming to take you away, haha.
Could be, yeah, it could well be. Oh gosh, what am I? Who am I? Well, I guess most people who might be tuning into this will know me as Ben. So yes, I'm an actor after a fashion.
Actor after a fashion, because I've noticed that sometimes you refer to yourself as semi-retired. What?
That's actually quite that really pretty much stemmed from the fact. I mean, this actually happened before the pandemic as well. I had that strange thing that happens sometimes. You get a very good moment in terms of because obviously all acting is freelance work. I had a very good year in 2018, which was equal with one other year the most I ever worked. Just in terms of being incredibly lucky in one year and just managing to get gig after gig after gig. It happens very rarely. But at the end of that particular year, thinking, I actually been away from home and away from my partner now for 8 months out of the 12 that exist in a year. And I think it was a point where I thought the chances of having a year like that in 2019 would probably have been low anyway. Because no one's that lucky. But I did think to myself, being a kind of young itinerant actor is great when you are young and you don't really have any other responsibilities, or you've not found other things in your life that mean a great deal to you. You're just you and yourself, and with you travel light and so on. But I thought, no, this is a sort of a bit of an interference in the other part of my life. So I thought, well, I'll go into a semi-retirement. I'll say to my agent, can we try and do fewer things, as if I'm someone who's massively in demand. And then as 2019 wore on, I thought, actually, I'm sort of happy in the place I'm in because I've got a recording studio near where I live, and I do quite a bit of work for them. I'm still connected to my old drama school, the Bristol Vic Theatre School, and I do work for them occasionally. So I thought, well, let's, at this point, let's have a hiatus. Let's go into semi-retirement and then see what happens. Of course, what happened was entirely unexpected. So I'm sort of still in that state, but I imagine most of the rest of the world is as well. So we'll see what happens when things take a turn for the better, I think.
Okay, so you're Bristol born and bred?
No, I am from the southwest part of the country. I was right down in the southwest in Plymouth, well, just outside of Plymouth. That's where I was born. And I was originally, after I went to university, because I did university before I did drama school, I was a journalist to begin with. Journalist, I wasn't particularly good at it. And then I lived in London for a while, and I went to Bristol simply because the Bristol Vic Theatre School was there, and I auditioned for them. But I really quite fell in love with the place. I think probably because I'm a country bumpkin, really. I mean, I was born in a semi-rural part of the country, and having lived in London, Bristol is almost like a sort of halfway point between the two. You have some of the relaxed atmosphere of living in the country, but you're still technically in a city. So I think it meshed with me rather better than London. Yeah.
So what led you decided first to be a journalist?
Well, that was I always actually wanted to go into the theatre and the various media, hopefully as an actor, and I even had the great fortune of having very encouraging parents, because I know sometimes actors say that their parents are like, for heaven's sake, don't do that. Go off and do something where you can actually, earn some money and have a standard of life. But they were really, really encouraging, God bless them. But it was me. I got to a point in my teenage years where I thought, I don't think this is a good idea. The only other thing I had something of an aptitude for was stringing together a coherent sentence. And I had teachers who said, maybe you should read English at university and with a mind to journalism, because then there's something kind of concrete at the end of it, which I did. And I started working on local newspapers and local radio. That was my sort of first stepping stone. But I quickly found that maybe the thing that makes a good journalist makes a bad actor. I think what makes a good journalist is to have a thick skin. And I really don't. And probably one of the few things in life where having a thin skin works is being an actor, because it's very easy access then to joy, tears, excitement when playing a part. I found it very hard as a journalist because I just psychologically always felt too involved in stories. And if stories became very serious or they were very emotional, it didn't do me too good. So then after journalism, I thought, I think I should get out of this. I don't think I'm a good fit. I was still prevaricating somewhat, and I thought, well, I'll go and do some teaching. So I did some teacher training, and then finally the voice that had always been quietly pushed away just got louder and louder. And I thought, well, you're still young enough to try out for a drama school. And my thinking was, why not go for the most prestigious, most highly acclaimed drama schools you can think of? Because if they tell you you're useless, it'll put it to sleep. It'll end it. Because I don't think I would have been that brave otherwise. But I was very, very fortunate in that one or two gave me an offer. And Bristol Vic was my favourite of the ones I went to. It just seemed to click with me. And then I ended up there. And and then became an actor, doing other things along with it, because you kind of have to, unless you're in that magical 2% of the acting population, which really they only have to, go from gig to gig to gig. Yeah, so that's how that sort of all happened.
So what sort of work do you like doing best of all? Stage or voice, or have you done much film stuff?
No, I've done some television, but I've never done film, apart from kind of very low budget stuff, which short film and so on. But I think it's probably what happens is you get into one media and you think about another one. So when you're on the stage, you're thinking, oh, wouldn't it be lovely now to go on and do a lovely voice job where I don't have to worry about what I look like, or I don't have to worry too much about, all the physicality. I can just concentrate everything into the vocal performance. And then when you're in a recording studio, you're thinking, oh, it'd be really nice about now to be wearing a costume and being out in front of an audience. And then when you're there, you're thinking, oh, it'd be lovely to work with a lens and all the technical side of the brain that you need to work with lenses. But I guess the plus side of that is if you've got a butterfly kind of mind, which I think I do have, that the attention span is, virtually non-existent, then being able to flit between them is quite nice. The downside is that I think probably not even probably, it is what happens is it can become very easy to be, the industry starts to associate you with one particular media and thinks that's what you do. And you can end up in a situation where you go for something and go, oh, I thought you were, for example, a voice actor. It's like, well, I am, but I am trained and have experience in other media as well. So one has to be somewhat watchful of that. So unless, of course, the niche is something that appeals to the particular actor, and then they dig in, and that's what they become known for. But I think if you want to keep going around it, you've got to almost say to yourself, okay, the next thing we'll try and go for will be on the stage, and then the next thing we'll try and go for will be with a television company or whatever.
So what are some of the works that you're most happy with? What are the things that you think, yep, that's what I was happy there, that was successful?
For me, because I'm not an actor with a very big profile, just a jobbing actor, when I've sometimes been fortunate enough to do commercially bigger things, it's usually maybe just a few lines here or there. But even if the remuneration isn't always of the greatest, sometimes the best experiences are in things that are out of the glare of the mainstream, if you like, because you don't need to have a name attached to you. And one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done in that regard was actually down in Bristol, which meant I didn't have to travel too far for work. And it was a staged version of Liz Lochhead's Dracula. So her adaptation of Stoker's novel. Probably the most interesting and complex adaptation of the novel by anyone. It's a fascinating piece of work. And I was very, very fortunate to be cast out of type. I think that's the other problem. It's not only the media that you get associated with, it's also there is, of course, a great deal of type casting because there is a surplus of us as actors. So you can, if you're a casting director or a producer or something, you can get exactly what you want. So very often actors aren't cast out of what they are perceived to be very often. And I went for the audition expecting to either be seen as Dr. Seward or even possibly Jonathan Harker. And the director asked me to read for Renfield. I thought, hey, this is good. And took a punt, and I got the part of Renfield, which, of course, then, because I was doing something that I wouldn't normally have been seen for, there was the excitement of this kind of character doesn't come my way very often. So I'm going to absolutely make the most of it. And the thing itself was really successful with audiences. I've never been in a play where the audience was so responsive. Sometimes negatively. We had 5 people leave on the same night, but that was because I think there was an expectation that because it was stage, it wouldn't perhaps be terribly frightening. And of course, audiences are so much more sophisticated. But there were parts of it that were quite horrifying. And we had an illusionist working with us, and I think it was a bit much for 5 members of the audience that night. But otherwise, this incredibly positive response where audiences would even sort of stay around afterwards to talk to the actors as we left, because they found it such an extraordinary experience. So I think that probably goes down as the really satisfying job. Yeah.
The last 12 months has been a bit more than 12 months now. It's been a very interesting time for the whole world. You guys are opening up a little bit more there. Philip in Sydney's just gone back into lockdown. How's the last 12 months been for you? What have you been up to? Have you been doing work during that time, or?
Yes, I was fortunate enough that one of the things that happened was my old drama school, the Bristol of it, they needed to do their auditions for intake of a new year group of students via Zoom, which is completely different. Normally, a person would come to the school, get a feel for the school, meet an audition panel, do their pieces. And of course, that couldn't happen. So the audition process, which normally takes about 3 months, 4 months maybe, took closer to 9 because you can only see so many people in a Zoom call. So I was asked if I would be on the audition panel for that, which I did, and that was great. I mean, it's extraordinary the people out there and young people out there with just this immense talent, and you think, oh my gosh, sometimes you think I want to take you all, and then you've got to go through the selection process. So I did that for many months, which meant I could work from home, which was incredibly useful. But as I said earlier, I have a recording studio about half hour from me, and they were able to keep running very strictly. They would only allow one actor in at a time, and the studio manager was cleaning things all the time, kettle, door handles. And I'm pleased to say they've managed to survive it, and they're now in a situation where they've been able to extend it to 2 actors in the recording studio building, obviously in separate areas now. So yes, there is a sense that things are progressing. I pretty much had the year, nearly 2 years, more or less at home. Unfortunately for my partner, she is in a vulnerable group, asthmatic. So we made the decision to lock down as much as possible, even when there wasn't an official lockdown. I think it's make or break for a partnership. Unfortunately, we sort of found we do get on. So we had a year of when we're not working. She was very lucky to be able to work from home as well with hers. Catching up on all those films we said we'd watch and never got round to, all those old television series, lots and lots of reading, listening to albums of an evening, doing lots of things like that, which it's been okay. Yeah, it's been fine. It's unfortunate that it was this context in which were able to do those things, but in a very selfish way, it was almost nice to go on a kind of hiatus from the real world for a bit. Sort of mixed feelings about that.
Do you have a couple of favourite albums that you were listening to? I'm big into music myself, so always keen to know what others like listening to.
It ranges around. I sometimes think that because my taste is so eclectic that I must have no taste.
No, that's not true. Not true.
Let me see. We ended up doing a thing where it was almost like pulling names out of a hat. So we would get a choice each. So my partner has introduced me to quite a bit of dance music that I missed out on. And we've been raving around the living room. And, I think I've introduced her to a lot of Germans because I've got a bit of a love for 1970s sort of German electronic music. So she now knows who Harmonia and Klooster and she always knew who Kraftwerk were and Neu. So I've got her into the Germans.
Do you listen to Can as well?
Oh yeah,
Not quite so electronic.
Yeah, Can is almost a state of mind. I think you've got to be in the right state of mind. But
when Damo Suzuki tours the world, meeting up with musicians all over the place, and he came here where I am. I'm in Tasmania.
Oh, wow.
And he came here one year, and I was doing a radio show at the time, and we got him into the studio with us for a couple of hours for our show. It was fascinating talking to that guy. Yeah,
I bet.
Yeah,
oh,
and to have such a legend of krautrock in the studio with us, it was great.
My wife had this amazing moment as well, where there's a festival in the UK called the Blue Dot Festival, which takes place at Droddle Bank, and Kraftwerk were playing. And she was introduced to this fella That's it. The connection was okay. This is a Doctor Who connection here. Kraftwerk were playing, but the BBC Radiophonic Workshop were also playing, and she went to the Radiophonic Workshop gig, say under the Jodrell Bank radio telescope, and she casually said to the guy next to her, she said, "Oh, it's kind of appropriate, really, because poor old Tom Baker fell off that, of course, at the end of his run of Doctor Who." And the fellow next to her said, "Did he?" And she went, "Yeah." He said, "Well, that's interesting." He said, "Because my father's company was responsible for the knitting of that scarf for that year." She looked and said, "What?" And he produced for her a photograph on his phone of this guy's about early 40s now, of him about 8 years old with this big purplish burgundy scarf around him. He said, "Yeah, my father ran a knitting company, and we were hired to do it based on the design, presumably of the BBC designer. We had to produce 3 scarves, 2 intact and 1 which was partly torn. I don't know why that was." He said, "We were, and because my brother and I were so young, we were invited to the set when they were given to Tom Baker, and got to see some of the recording. And he had all these little faded photographs of him and his brother going to BBC Television Centre and meeting Tom Baker. And just from a chance comment, I thought, well, there you go. Doctor Who and German electronic music will follow you around everywhere because of me.
we always credit June Hudson, like we probably imagine June Hudson sitting there with knitting needles doing, but obviously she just designed it and sent it out to the company to manufacture.
Don't do the hard work. Just you do the design and then get someone else to actually knit one and purl one. You know.
Who would have thought that a krautrock conversation would lead to Tom Baker's scarf? That's bizarre. Speaking of Doctor Who, I hear that your Doctor growing up was Sylvester McCoy, right?
Yeah, I was quite young, so I did get to see Colin, but a couple of years makes an enormous difference when you're a child, doesn't it?
Mm.
So the Sylvester McCoy years, they're much, I think, more embedded in my sort of childhood memory. Yeah.
So how did you come to work for Big Finish? What's the connection there?
I did it when I was in my last year of drama school. They sort of said to a few of us, 4 of us, as it was. I don't know if they were trying to tell us we had faces for radio or what, but they did say, you 4 do seem to have a bit of a potential, shall we say, with your voice work, with your acting for radio and so on. So we did this thing called the Carlton Hobbs Bursary, which is the BBC run it, and 4 students from all the major drama schools, they enter into what is effectively a competition, and the winner, if you like, of which goes on to work for the BBC radio drama channel, Radio 4. I think it's for 5 months. Just on whatever project comes on, you become part of that company of actors. And now we actually won that year, and it was my partner who took the 5-month prize. I put it all down to me. She really shouldn't take any credit there. And I was sort of then off, graduating and trying to find work elsewhere. But one of the people who trained me in radio said, "Have you heard of Big Finish?" I said, "Because they're a very good company to work for. They're very much worth sending your CV and a letter to. Like graduate student actors seem to spend all their time doing, begging for work." And as it happened, this particular teacher knew Lisa Bauman, and they ran into each other. And my name must have been quite fresh in this teacher's mind. And she said, "If you do receive a CV and some sound clips from Elliot Chapman, give them a listen over, because I think he might be, useful to have in the back of your mind." And Lisa said, "Okay, fine." And luckily for me, she happened to listen to some of the stuff I'd done for radio at the time that they were looking for a Ben, the possibility of doing Ben without Michael Craze. And I just happened to have, as one of my sound clips, a radio play I had done where I was playing a young Cockney lad. So it just did that. And then I was doing a play and an email pinged into me during an interval. We were actually doing the play. And there it was. And I thought, oh, yeah. But then I started to panic. So I thought, how am I going to do it? Because I'm doing this play for months and months and months. And as it turned out, I was able to catch a train in to do my very first couple of episodes before a matinee show. I mean, thank heavens the trains were working and they were running on time that particular day, because I went up in the morning and I worked to the early afternoon. I made it back very, very fast, did the matinee show and then did the evening show. And we did the third and fourth episodes, I think, a couple of days later when I wasn't having to do I didn't have to do a matinee. So yeah, that's really how that happened. Just one of those lovely series of coincidences, really.
Were you a bit of a fan of Doctor Who beforehand?
Oh, sure, yeah. One of the things about the period I think I was growing up on it was, although it was sort of coming to an end in its original incarnation, it was actually quite a good time, because you'd get a season every year of stories, Colin or Sylvester in my case. But we had a mobile video library that used to come to our street, and they had all the early BBC, the old BBC Enterprises videos of earlier stories, Scenes of Death or Pyramids of Mars or something. And my dad used to hire them out for me. So I had this diet of the stuff before my time. And then when it did stop, I think the early 90s was full of repeats of old Bill Hartnell stories. And I remember the BBC did a season of one story per Doctor. So I'd say up until about 94-ish, say about 85, 86 to 94, I was really solidly into it, loved it. Then I think a combination of it being off for as long as it was, plus 1994, teenage years really start kicking in. It sort of disappeared for a long time. Popped up a couple of times, I think. Something might have triggered an interest. Oh, I'll go back and look at some old stuff. And then when it came back properly in 2005, I remember being really making sure that my Saturday early evenings were clear to watch those go out. And then when Ben came around, obviously I spent quite a bit of time watching and or listening to the existing or non-existent, but at least existing on sound, Ben and Polly stories. And then it was just very easy to start rewatching bits of the classic series again, which was enormous fun. Yeah, so it's gone and it's ebbed and flowed.
Had you heard any Big Finish prior to being cast in the role?
Yes, I had. When I was first told about Big Finish as a possibility of of gainful employment, it didn't occur to me at the time. I guess because maybe 10 years had passed. I didn't recognise the name at first, but then I realised as I was researching them, I know this. I've got one of these, and it was because when near where I used to live, there was a comic store, and I remembered going into the comic store because they had secondhand records and comics, and I used to get a lot of secondhand records. And I remember going in, there was this huge poster of Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy, and this thing called The Sirens of Time. And I bought it because I thought, because that was a real nostalgia hit. So I guess that must have been very tail end of the 90s.
99.
99, right, there you go. So, and I remembered listening to that with a sort of big grin plastered on my face because, I mean, particularly with Colin and Sylvester, they were my doctors from my childhood. So I suddenly realised I had heard this big... I didn't know that they had quite the amount of material. as they went on to produce. And, yeah.
So did you need to audition for the role, or Lisa just offered it to you off your tape?
It was just an offer. I'm not entirely sure of the narrative of events. I think perhaps other people were listened to, because in radio and in audio, it's a bit different to television and theatre, where you do audition in front of people. This is very much you have your collection of little clips from whatever radio or audio you've done, and then it's available to producers and directors and casting directors, should they be interested. It's one of those things you never know you're being listened to. So it for me, it felt very out of the blue, but I imagine given the importance for Big Finish, because I know recasting was not something they entered into lightly. I imagine they listened to other actors. I don't know. All I know is that Lisa had been given my stuff, as I said, by this teacher of mine, and it was just very, very fortunate that I had, I think, this Cockney role of this young guy on it. So I just think it was just one of those lovely serendipitous moments, where that clip arrived at the right time.
There's not much of Ben's stuff around. Were you kind of aware of who he was, though?
Yeah, oddly, because when I was watching Doctor Who as a child, there wasn't the merchandise around Doctor Who as there is now, of course, but there would occasionally be little bits and bobs. And I remember that my grandmother bought me maybe sort of half a dozen to a dozen of the old novelizations. And a couple of them were earlier ones. And there was this character called Ben, and there was this character called Polly. So yeah, I knew the name. When the part came my way, I was directed towards the War Machines, because that existed completely, and it was his debut. But I managed to very easily track down all the things that, thank heavens, it all existed on sound. Even though there are only a few episodes, and thankfully now, due to the animated reconstructions, there's more of a sense of complete, as much as a sense of completeness as I think you can get, short of the tapes turning up again. That helped a great deal. But as I was doing Doctor Who on audio, or I was about to do Doctor Who on audio, listening to television stories was perfect in a way.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, The Early Adventures, The Yes Men.
No one home? No one anywhere, Ben. It's all very odd.
You want to investigate?
Don't you? Well, no bones broken at least. And we're in.
The acting prime designate is on her way here with security. You'll be sent for full data extraction.
Can you tell me how she died?
Accessing data from CIB. Meg Carvoss's death was due to myocardial infarction.
I'm back at Culloden. This time, different.
Meg Carvoss's death was due to an ischemic stroke.
Now, hey, let them go.
The Prime Designate says that if we advance, she will kill the hostages.
You've got to do something.
We are following the data extracted from your brain.
What was it that killed her?
Meg Carvoss's death was due to malignant neoplasia.
A city under the ground.
How long have you lot been down here?
The city was established 12.8 years ago, citizen.
She died of cancer, a heart attack, and a stroke.
Yes, citizen. We think you can teach us. We dissect the operative parts of your head. Bring the human.
No, wait. You don't need to slice me. Look, I can tell you what you want to know. Hey!
Big Finish. We love stories.
So what was it like turning up to the studio that first day? You knew no one at all, but you must have had an awareness of who some of the people were. What was your first day like?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, I mean, they're all actors and they're producers, and so everyone's very professional. So, but even beyond that, it was a very warm atmosphere. I mean, I was a little nervous meeting Annika because obviously Ben and Polly are linked. And Mike is someone she not only worked with but had become a friend, and I found out later that they even done the convention circuit together at times. So they were a proper duo. But I think it really helped that. I mean, she's an incredibly good-hearted, charming person anyway. So it's like, I felt immediately welcome. But I think probably what helped a little as well was I didn't come in with any intention of reinventing the wheel. I think she was pretty clear that I'd done the research, and that as far as I was concerned, Mike had laid the foundation, and I was going to stick as closely to what he had done. I think that probably did help. And Fraser is just life and soul of the party. He's a very good. It's interesting as well because a lot of the atmosphere on a television set or on a radio or in the theatre is determined by the lead. And because Fraser was playing the Doctor in addition to Jamie, my mind sort of went, well, he's the lead. And if the lead is affable and creates a good atmosphere, and which Fraser does, then it's a lovely working environment. But it was interesting that he does not see himself as the lead, because I sort of said this in passing about, well, you're the lead or something, and he really doesn't see it that way. For him, it's very much an ensemble. But I think that also shows a very positive aspect of Fraser Hines, the person, that he does the good leading man's job without thinking he's the leading man, and I think that carries through, and we always have a lovely atmosphere. And Lisa was just as director, just so encouraging and giving me the latitude to, within the parameters set down by Michael Craze, to try and own it as much as I could, to not feel on the back foot because this was someone else's role before me. So she was very good at kind of instilling a confidence in those early performances. Yeah.
Did you feel that she was being an actor herself was good to have her as a director in that respect?
Yeah, it is probably a truism that actors who graduate to be directors, they really, really know what it's like to be directed, having been actors. I find her such a strong director. She navigates the path of it so well, in that we are always up against the clock because you have to do 2 episodes a day. So there is a point where you've really got to keep going, and she's got to provide that pace. But there is an enormous trust. And I think actually one of the things is when you are pushed for time, I think sometimes directors will go, we're pushed for time. That line there, I just think you need to do it like this. And that's not Lisa's way. She'll let you find it. Even if the clock's running down, she'll trust that the actor can find what it is. And if you she'll go, that's what I was looking for. It's bliss to work that way because you feel as though you've achieved something. So yeah, she's very good. Yeah, I like working with her. Yeah.
The way that you sort of did your role was because you did the first 2 early adventures together. Then a year later was a companion chronicle. Then a year after that was another 2 early adventures. So you're only going in for the odd day here and there. How did you find going each time in terms of, was there new ground to cover? Was there re-establishing relationships? New things you were trying to do with your character?
The odd thing was that there was a point, and I think probably because of the release schedule being the way it is, there was a point where I felt I was there a lot. And then if we did have gaps, I was in the situation of suddenly I was being invited to conventions. So I was able to see Fraser and Annika and Lisa quite a bit. I found being invited to conventions quite startling, really, because I thought, well, I'm not the original. I'm just a voice. What possible interest could fans have in the guy? And then I found really just how there's nothing in Doctor Who which I think is too small to have a fan's interest. So there was a kind of momentum that carried through the relationships. And in regards to the character, one of the things I found was that I started to really mark the obvious technical differences that I needed to sort of slightly adjust my performance for, because when Mike and Annika and Fraser and Patrick Troughton were doing it on television in the 60s, it's a television that's so different to the TV of now. 3-walled sets, 5 cameras. It was more theatre on television. Far fewer close-ups, because of course close-ups are one of the delights of working on a single camera, and those cameras were big. And there were vision mixing between them. So it was a kind of electronic theatre in a way. And the performances, given the technology, particularly in regards to sound, the actors are slightly pitching it up to allow for that. You fast forward to now, and you've got this very, very high-tech, very sensitive microphone, and you're in a booth, and they have complete control over the sound. So I suddenly realized, actually, I need to make sure that as much as I'm trying to follow in the in what Mike has laid down, I've got to adjust it slightly for this technology. And one of the things I found started to emerge was that my version of Ben, as a result of taking into account this technology and these changes, was a little bit more contained, which made him come across as a little bit more vulnerable. So I don't think it's a massive jump, but I always think of Mike's Ben as being the tough Ben, and my Ben is probably being the slightly more, as I say, vulnerable one, because you have to sort of come down a bit. You have to, which doesn't really lend itself for that kind of same pitch of attitude that Ben has on television. But I think what also fed into that were the writers on Big Finish were very keen to suggest more interiority with the companions than had perhaps been the case on the television. Because, of course, they're writing in a context where there is a new series on which characterization has been upped. Big Finish it's interesting with their Doctor Who, they almost have to balance out two quite different iterations. They are doing the classic series, but they are doing the classic series in a context in which the new series is made. So I think that what they've done as a result is they've upped the characterization of even those established companions. There's more about, as I say, their interiority or their emotional landscape, or putting them through a ringer as individuals than perhaps there was on the television in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And that's not to denigrate that period of Doctor Who. That period of Doctor Who was about plots. It was about ideas. A lot of television back then wasn't quite in those genres, wasn't quite as much about characters as it is now. The characterization thing is almost quite new, really. Actually taking from prestigious drama and so on.
Yeah, in preparation to speak with you tonight, I listened to The Forsaken today, which is a perfect example of that, where Ben comes face to face with his father at the same physical age as him. So that's an example of the characters themselves having more to them than they ever had on screen. There was only the companions that we saw on screen. We never saw their relatives or anything like that. So that is definitely a new series thing, which is it's great, and the audio medium lends itself perfectly to that kind of development too. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's great.
That was an interesting one. Yeah, I do remember that, because as you say, it's the double whammy. It's not only meeting your father, because it was also established that Ben's father was dead in another story. So it's not just meeting your dad who no longer exists for you in your time. It's meeting him at the same age as you. Mm. Yeah, that was great. That was really interesting angle. Yeah.
Are there any particular stories or writers that stand out for you?
I think I really like Simon Guerrier, because I think he does a rather clever thing, which is he's very aware that in our case, these stories had to be kind of set around 1966. I don't mean the year 1966, I mean the season of 1966. So it didn't matter if you were off on an alien planet in the far future or whatever. There had to be a sense of the tone, the style of a 1966 Patrick Troughton Doctor Who. At the same time, you can't write as if the last 50 odd years hasn't happened. And I thought he was always very clever and very witty at encapsulating some of the anxieties, obsessions, but also the technology of the current era, and neatly and anachronistically putting it back then. There's one episode I remember that everyone's using what is effectively iPads. He refers to them as, they're referred to in the story as "pass me the flat computer," because of course the concept wouldn't be there. But so he's very clever at doing those little asides, which he writes about a future that does exist from the perspective of it not knowing it's going to exist. So that's great. And then you end up in a kind of Mobius strip with his writing. But I like The Outliers a great deal, which is one of his. That was fun. But as an alternative, Guy Adams's The Plague of Dreams, which is a companion chronicles, was a real delight, because it's one of the things that the companion chronicles can do. It really broke with what expectation is for a Doctor Who story. It gave me this other lovely part to play, and the last one I did, which was with David Warner, which was a bit of a prize, because you were talking earlier about my first day, and Fraser was kind of giving me a little rundown on Big Finish, and knowing it was my first day. And he started talking about different actors that had been involved. He said, "Oh, and we've had David Warner." And I said, "Oh my God, David Warner." And he said, "Oh, do you like David Warner?" I could notice him smirking a bit in that phrase. I didn't know there was a connection between Lisa and David Warner. How could I know? And I'd said something like, "I think the man's a walking, talking masterclass." I think that was the phrase I used. And Lisa said, "Oh, I'll tell him that tonight over dinner. He'll be amused." And of course, I think I went bright red, realizing that there was a connection between them. And Fraser said, "Well, at least you didn't turn around and say, 'Oh my God, he's a terrible actor.'" I went, "Oh yeah, that's true." I said, "But no, God, absolutely not. He's one of my all-time acting heroes." And 4 years later, the lovely Ian Atkins, who used to produce the companion chronicles, he said, I think we've managed to secure David to do a companion chronicles with you," which was simultaneously really exciting and a little unnerving, because I said I'd admired his work and what he does as an actor for an awfully long time. But he was a delight. So that one on a very personal level, because it meant, it's quite something to act alongside one of your acting heroes.
But it's not just here; they get the most amazing actors all through Big Finish. These names just keep coming and just go unbelievable.
It is extraordinary. I mean, and the excitement of a guest cast list coming through. Who am I working with on this one? Who are we working with on this one? I remember we did, I think it was The Outliers, we were working with Alistair Pitry, and he was just doing Star Wars. So that was all incredibly exciting. I think Rogue One? I think he was in Rogue One. Yes, I think he was doing Rogue One. So we were all somewhat in awe of, he was part of this other, legendary fantasy series.
So why the decision to stop playing Ben?
That was sort of connected to the general feeling I had in 2019 of after this very, very good year I'd had, where I'd worked a lot. I am missing home. I am missing being around my partner. It's lovely to work as an actor, and I do have a mortgage to pay. But I need to, for this other aspect of my life, I can't just always be on the road. And the more I sort of got into that way of thinking, you start to think about other things that you do. And I thought, with Big Finish, I've been doing that for 4 years on and off. I'm probably at the end of my piece of elastic in terms of what I can bring to Ben. I mean, even though, as I've said earlier, I think writers have worked so hard to make those characters even more multifaceted, but it was probably as much as I thought I could bring without starting to bend whatever Mike Craze had laid down out of shape a bit. I'd also, as I said, done some conventions by then, but a little voice in my head went, much longer are you going to do this? Are you going to play Ben in 2 years' time? 5? 10? I thought, and I had a sort of similar feeling about the conventions. Can you see yourself being able to go to them with the same passion and energy in 5 to 10 years' time, or are you going to be going through the motions slightly? I know I'm a person who sometimes likes to know where the exit sign is almost on everything in life. And I'm a sort of strong believer in the idea of a series of enjoyable and intense moments rather than trying to drag things maybe past their best. And the more this was sort of going around my head, someone made a throwaway comment to me, which was almost like a signal from the universe. And it was a perfectly innocent comment. They said, you do realize you've done almost as many, or you've done as many episodes for Big Finish as Michael Craze did for television. And I went, oh, no, I didn't know that. And I thought about it for about half an hour after the person said, and then is it really tasteful to carry on in that, knowing that, that's the original, he's the definitive. So I started to think that as well. I thought, I think you've just been given almost like the final little push to make a decision. So it was like, yeah, I'm really pleased with those 4 years. Maybe I should go before I do something that I don't think was very good. So
you say it's no never, or just no not now?
Oh, I doubt strongly that well, no, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't return. I mean, I don't think that would be terribly fair on Big Finish, to be honest, to have an actor who's constantly, well, I'm starting again, I'm starting because they've got things to consider, and they've got a schedule in their head, and so on and so forth. So I don't think that would be terribly fair to them if I started to make overtures of, I'd very much like to come back to that part. And frankly, I don't think it's necessary, because I think one of the wonderful things about the fact that we are now in a phase, an era where after that initial, will this work? Will the fans like people being recast? And Tim Trelaw's done such a lovely job of the Third Doctor, and I got away with playing Ben. I think we're now in a situation where it can be recast again. I think Ben now, Michael Craze will always be the definitive Ben, but I think we're in a phase now where Ben is a character that can be played by other actors in just the same way as the First Doctor is now a character that is played by other actors. William Hartnell is the definitive. He is the First Doctor. But we've had David Bradley. Heavens, even I've played the First Doctor, albeit for about 2 scenes in a Companion Chronicles, which no one should ever listen to because, oh boy, Peter Purvis, and his job is safe as the custodian of the First Doctor. But yeah, I think that yeah, go on. If they want to do Ben stories, absolutely give another actor a crack at it. It's a fun part.
So you cope with being recast, okay? You don't mind?
I mean, if I've nicked the job from someone else can give me. No, that's a bit frivolous. No, but I think it would be incredibly hypocritical of me as someone who was lucky enough to inherit this part to bristle about someone else doing it. No, I think it would be interesting. Yeah. And maybe, depending on how fans feel about it, because ultimately fans vote with their wallets when it comes to Big Finish, but maybe because I tried as much as I could to stick to Mike's approach, but inevitably there would be a drift, that the next actor might even be able to push it a little on further. I'm not saying lose sight of what Mike did. I think that would be a mistake, but there might just be a chance to push it in a slightly different zone. Who knows?
Did Annika ever tell you how she felt about your performance?
She was very sweet. I mean, as I sort of intimated earlier, I think what helped was that I didn't come in with the attitude of, oh, this is my partner. I think that would have been not only insulting to her, I don't think it would have done me a lot of good either, because there is a dedicated audience. No one wants to hear that. So I think the fact that I did do the research and Mike was always my touchstone. I don't know what I do. Oh, right, okay. Let's see what Mike might have done as Ben in a similar situation. Was made her feel like I was serious about it, and I was not forgetting the guy who did all the groundwork. It's tricky though, because you do sort of have to try and avoid at the same time being a bad cover version. I'm not an impressionist. That's not my skill. I'm not someone who has a facility to accurately do other people's voices. I'm an actor who tried to get close to the technical delivery of another actor just to provide a certain continuity. But the impression can never lead the intention. If the impression leads the intention, the audience picks up on it. I think an audience is much more forgiving of maybe the times when my voice didn't sound like Mike's than they would have been if the acting, the intention in the scene fell flat because I was too worried about doing the voice. You learn the voice, you learn the approach, you learn the cadences and rhythms, but once the green light comes on, you have to play the scene for all its integrity. And you are reacting to another actor. So to have this part of you disappearing into, oh, what do I sound like? What do I sound like? Do I sound like Mike? The scene's dead if you start doing that. And it's an insult to the other actor in the scene as well, because you're not reacting to them. You're just conscious of how close you are to a voice. So I think that was an important thing, not to get too caught up. But Annika is such a good actor, and she gets all this. So because in a sense, she was doing a similar thing. She had a poly voice, which she finds like that, but it's different to the voice she uses as a narrator, So I felt that there was a sympathetic resonance there, that because she also knew that, right, I've got to find my poly voice, but I can't let finding my poly voice dominate the scene, because then it just becomes about actors doing voices, and it should always be about the drama of the scene.
I think that's the secret to successful recasting, is that you're not going in to do an impression, you're going in to do a characterization, and I think that's far more important, is to get the essence rather than a sound-alike. Unless, of course, you're John Coleshaw, whereas he can sound like anyone.
Yes, he's the exception that proves the rule. Yeah, no, I agree. I can understand why, we've all done it. I remember years and years ago, they used to I used to listen to a lot of radio. It's one of the reasons that I like radio acting, radio drama and radio comedy. They used to do reruns of Dad's Army, the British comedy Dad's Army, but on the radio. And the way they used to do it in those days is they would record the television version, and then they would all trot down to Maid of Vale or somewhere, or Broadcasting House, and do the radio version. But I noticed that one of the characters was played by a different actor. It was all the other characters were played by the actors from the television, but James Beck, who had played one of the characters on the television, was obviously not available for the radio version. So a different actor played him. And I'm just as sensitive to anyone of going, ooh, it's not quite right. So it's all about balance. On one hand, I've got to not drift too far from Mike Craze, because the audience that we're doing these for want to feel as though that this is running parallel to the television era. They don't want to be pulled out of it too much. That sense of, I've just watched The War Machines. I'm now listening to the Yes Men, and I want to feel that they're part of the same continuum in some way, even though one's on television and one's on sound. So you're trying your hardest not to be so different technically that they feel pulled out of it. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. It can't dominate that moment, because you suddenly realize there are other things that people are already making a leap on. They're not seeing any black and white images except in their mind. The music is done on modern synths, not stock music from back in the day, or chamber orchestra or whatever. There's a narrator for the visual moments. So people are already coping with a lot. So the last thing you want to do is then sound like Dick Van Dyke when you should be sounding like Michael Graves.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions.
Inscape, our guide and friend, hear my plea. Save my children.
Philip Hinchcliffe presents Doctor Who, The Genesis Chamber.
Good morning, Newton City. Today, we celebrate as President DeRosa Jans renews his pledge to uphold decency and citizenship in our beautiful colony.
You brought these in here. Look at her. The girl's no better than a savage.
What could be better than a savage?
I'm sorry. That identity is not recognized. You are a threat to the colony.
What are you, Doctor? Explain yourself.
Have you been listening to me? Your village defenses wouldn't stop a current bun. Now get out of my way. Good to find Leela.
Warning. All city systems are under attack. Please remain in your seats.
Presidential override. Open up!
Leo, stop it! We should never have come!
You are a Time Lord. You travel through time and relative dimensions in space.
You have no right, no right, no right!
Doctor, your history is alarming.
Big Finish. We love stories.
You actually did an audio with Tom Baker that was not related to Ben Jackson. So tell us about that.
Oh yeah, that was great fun. I think it was I think it might have been a kind of well done. The Ben stuff seems to have worked, because I do remember when I did the first one, I was told, because it was so early on in this whole recasting thing, we're not sure if this will work. This might be it. We'll see. And thankfully, I think for the very reason that you mentioned earlier, that the script was good, so people were happy to hear more. But I was given this sort of reward, which was, do you want to play another character? Would you like to work with Tom Baker and Lou Jameson? I was like, yes, I'd love to work with Tom Baker and Lou Jameson. And it was the most wonderful experience, because it was in a completely different studio than any of the ones I was used to. It was out in the country near where Tom lives. So it was lovely surroundings for a start. And it was the height of summer, or spring going into summer. And it was a 6-parter. So we were there for longer. It took about a week to do. It was a bigger cast. And I was playing, I think it turned out, I was playing one fairly sizable role, a smaller role, and 2 little blink and you miss them roles. So I had plenty to do. It was a wonderful experience. And the thing I remember most of all was my ribs aching the week after, because Tom Baker's really like that. And I just was doubled up most of the time. But he's so funny. But he really, really was quite magical to work with. And I think one of the reasons is he knows the part so well. He's created this version of the Doctor, and he's played it on and off. He knows what he's doing. It's this wonderful ability to sort of riff on the scripts and then make the suggestion, do you want to have that, or do we want to stick absolutely to the writing? He never rides roughshod over the writing of the script writer, I'm not going to say that, but he's very good at pinpointing maybe some things that will work, simply because he knows his Doctor inside out. And I remember 2 instances. One was he had to fly on the back of a giant reptile, something that can be best achieved on audio. And I don't know if I can do this because we haven't been introduced. So he got the reptile named. We'll give her a name, which was great because then it set up another little thread that ran through the rest of the story, was the references to this giant reptile who was then a character in its own right. And he was very good at just amending certain lines to make them perhaps a little bit more inventive or unpredictable, which was really, really interesting to just, he does it all on the fly as well. He's a very fast mind. And Louise Jameson, absolutely delightful to work with. It was a great cast all around. The only thing I regret about it is 2 days before I was due in the studio, I got a terrible cold, and the only upsetting thing about the whole experience is I can hear it. I can hear how bunged up I am playing more the president's son role than the other role, which a few more days passed, so it ebbed away a bit. But yeah, that bugs me. Anytime I've ever heard that, it's like, oh, you're so bunged up, and you can tell. But never mind.
I noticed that I've seen online that you've done conventions. I don't know how many you've done with Tim Treloar. I saw one that you did with Tim. Fans are often not backwards in coming forwards with expressing their opinions. Did you ever have much resistance to recasting in your convention travels? Because I know online there are still quite a few fans who say, "Oh, no, it's a recast. It's not the same. I'm not going to buy into it." Did you get much of that during conventions?
To tell you the truth, I readied myself for it because, in a way, doing a convention is almost a PR exercise. You're there as an ambassador for the show and Big Finish, as it would have been in my case. I mean, I never went hunting. I mean, Lisa Bowen did actually say, don't go to message boards. I thought, I don't even know where they are. I said, don't go to message boards. And I said, okay. But I never experienced anything but real positivity. Fans are really sweet at conventions, and I prepared myself twice over. One, they're not going to like it because it's not Michael Craze. And two, they're just going to wonder who the hell I am. Who's that guy at the end of the autograph row? We don't even recognize him. But far from it, just absolutely lovely. And to the extent where I've got to know some people, either because I saw them repeatedly at conventions, or I've got to know them on Twitter or something. It's so positive. Yeah, I've never had any trouble.
I think it comes down to the quality of the stories. If the stories are good, people accept you. I think if the stories hadn't been, you would have more problems.
It probably helped a great deal that I was cushioned by having so many original actors around. Fraser, Annika, they almost created a kind of atmosphere of authenticity. Because Fraser had his own challenge as well, because he was playing the second Doctor. Yeah, he was playing the second Doctor. He completely knew as well that okay, I've got to make sure that this is right. I just wish you could have all seen him do it, because one of I mean, it would spoil the illusion, I guess. But one of the things I really liked about watching Fraser do the second Doctor was that he would physicalize Patrick Troughton's mannerisms, do it. Which is actually what all good voice actors do. It's not just a vocal performance, but and none of it was recorded separately. He would do the flip between the Doctor and Jamie in real time. But it was fascinating to just watch him through the mirror. One moment he's like, the hands come up, now Jamie, Polly, Ben, and then it changes for him to go into Jamie, and it just flipping between, and it's like, you paid double for this.
Yeah, I think he should have been paid double for it.
But it's a really thorough performance.
Fraser, we don't get many Doctor Who actors down here in Tasmania. We've usually got to go to the mainland to see them when they come. But Fraser did come down here a few years back, and got to see him here in my home state. And he did do that on stage while he was talking to us. He was just doing a monologue, And he did that switching backwards and forwards. You are absolutely right. It was amazing to watch.
And it's lovely because, having spoken to him over many years, it's such an affection between him and Patrick Troughton that it carries with it not only the fact that he's technically good, but it's such a lovely tribute as well. It's sort of very heartwarming because, they had such a great relationship. Such a great relationship. I think it's something he's very proud of, that he's able to play this part that his great friend created.
So what's next for Elliot Chapman?
Well, I'm perhaps ironically, for someone who's having to be seen about his knees, I've got a little problem in my knee. I'm actually about to do an audiobook all about marathon running. I'm literally doing that on Monday, which is just hilarious. Yeah, sometimes I get these quite random requests. So the publisher of this, they heard me do something else and said, "We think your voice is perfect for a book about marathon running." You think, how can you tell that from a voice? But mine is not to reason why. I'm going to be in studio next week. But the delight in doing that is, for many years, I did a lot of fiction, so a lot of audiobooks that were novels. And for some reason, can't say why, I've been getting a lot of non-fiction recently. But the delight is suddenly I become a bore on subjects I hitherto knew nothing about. I now know a tremendous amount about running.
So where are you hoping to be 5-10 years? What's the plan?
Oh my gosh. I can't think in those things. Thinking in a 24-hour cycle is about as comfortable as I can be. I mean, I don't know. It's I do sort of feel a bit at, as I sort of explained earlier, a bit of a uncertainty with acting. I mean, it might be something I go back to. The difficulty, I think, is although it's wonderful when you are acting, I mean, that is the delight. That's why we do it. The stuff around it can be quite wearing. That sense of, you complete a job and it doesn't matter how good the job has been for you, how many months you were on it, you are sort of back to square one. And that can be like, whew. And there are certain jobs now where I'd be sort of reluctant to do for the simple reason that I'm not 25 anymore. So it's things like I doing big tours. I like my family life, and I don't want to be off for 8 to 12 months plus doing a big theatre tour or something. But that's still sort of up in the air. The nice thing is, because I still get a healthy amount of offers to do audiobooks and voiceover work, and sitting in a cupboard talking to myself is absolutely fine. I'm able to keep going, but I'll see. There might come a point where it's like I'm so missing being on the stage or something that I'll seek it out. But as for 5 years or 10 years, oh god, a terrifying thought.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. We've really appreciated meeting you and having you on. And thanks for your stories.
Oh, bless you. That's very kind of you. Thank you for letting me drone on.
There's something out there. Something very wrong. But the more I look, the more I can't seem to see.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who: The Early Adventures, The Home Guard.
This is Leading Seaman Jackson. Arrived as we were setting off.
Have we met before?
I don't think I've had the pleasure, sir.
Well, it's not only the Doctor. With the war and everything else, well, it's not that easy to pin down to anything particular. But nothing round here feels right. Harry! Down to the shelter quick!
Sorry, you think the Doctor's a spy?
He is working with the enemy! Doctor, what are you going to do?
I'm sure something will occur to me.
Doctor, no! Those things are killing our people!
We can't possibly win.
He likes to be known as the Master.
You two know each other?
Oh, of old.
Big Finish. We love stories.
So there you go. That was a trailer for The Home Guard. That was the last early adventures that Elliot Chapman was involved in that we spoke about briefly there during the interview. What did you think of that, Philip?
It was
the
great.
interview, not the story.
No, I know. It's a great time talking with Elliot. He's got a good sense of humour, and I just love the way he threw himself into the role and what it all meant.
Yeah.
For a few years, but now he's kind of stepped back and moving on with life and other things. So it's obviously a part of his life. He can compartmentalize his life, and he's managed to do that.
Would it be compartmentalize?
Oh, that's probably the word. I'm in lockdown. Be kind to me. My brain's not working anymore.
Oh, I know.
I'm stuck with all my family all the time.
I know. I've done quarantine a couple of times myself during this whole thing. It's funny that. It's pretty much the rest of the country except for me.
Well,
where I am.
Keep hoping that you stay safe.
Yeah, I hope so. So I'm just looking at the news, waiting for cases to start appearing here. So how about we have a little talk about our recommendations? And whose turn is it, Philip? I think it might be...
I don't know. Whose is it?
I think it's yours. I think it's your turn. What have you got to recommend for us?
There's a pattern. I'm sure there's a pattern. Anyhow, I've been listening to one of the audiobooks. This has come out recently, The Arc of Infinity, by Terrence Dix. It's read by Jeffrey Beavis, so not someone is a natural link to the show, really. I mean, Jeffrey Beavis is, of course, in terms of master. But he just does have the most wonderful voice, and he plays a really fantastic Omega.
Mm.
And it's a great read, great story, and I've enjoyed it.
Is that an Uncle Terry novelisation?
It is an Uncle Terry book. So it's indeed new cover by Andrew. I've got mind blank. Skeletor. I've got the right.
That sounds right.
Yeah,
anyhow, we'll go with it.
Yeah, it's a new cover rather than the awful tacky photo that they had in the original Target novel. They've got a nice painting.
That's what gave them their charm.
Oh, those photos were awful. Yeah, we're not talking about Target novels. What about you? What have you been listening to, Dwayne?
Well, I am going to recommend an album, a CD, since we got a very, very interesting tangent there with Elliot talking about German krautrock from the 70s. He was into the electronic side of things, but I did touch on a band called Can, which was a bit more percussive, not quite so electronic. Well, not electronic at all, really. So I thought I might recommend one of their albums. And who could I go with? There was 4 albums by Can that were done in the 70s featuring Damo Suzuki, the Japanese lead singer. And I might go with the old classic, Tago Mago. Have a listen to that if you want to get a taste of what Elliot and I were rabbiting on about during that interview. Yeah, have a listen to Tago Mago, or Tago Mago, however you want to pronounce it, by Can. Check it out on Spotify. See if you like it. It's kind of groovy. It's groovy stuff.
I'll have a listen this week.
I bet you will. Thanks, Philip. Thanks very much for organising that and for sharing this one with me. We will be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Don't know why I said that, but it just came to my head. So thanks, Philip. See ya.
See you, Dwayne.
Bye everyone.
Bye, Audiophile.
You've been listening to the Sirens of Audio, episode 69, A Sailor's Tale, with special guest Elliot Chapman and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Next time we cross over to Blake 7, where our special guest Stephen Greif joins us to talk about his life, his career, and reprising the role of Space Commander Travis for Big Finish. Theme music by the Jackpot Golden Boys. Email address is sirensofaudio@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or your favourite podcatcher, or both. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and leave lots of comments on our YouTube channel. We love them. Join our Facebook group by searching for the Sirens of Audio on that platform. Tweet us at Audio Sirens. And leave your own audio clip of feedback at anchor.fm/Sirens of Audio for us to play on a future show. And whenever you're feeling nostalgic for the good old days of black and white, even if you were born in the age of colour, even if you were born in the age of the internet. Just let your mind go back to that magical time anytime. Because audio drama... Raw!